They underestimated her because she was small, because she was quiet, because she wore a medic's insignia instead of a sniper's badge. But Sloane Barrett was never only one thing. She was a daughter shaped by loss, a corpsman forged by war, and a marksman trained for the day someone would need protecting. When that day came, she did not just save a mission, she changed what a woman in combat could look like.
It was a Monday morning in early March of 2025, and a waiting room at the San Diego Naval Medical Center held 43 veterans. Among 42 men sat a single woman desperately wishing she could vanish. Sloane Catherine Barrett sat perfectly still, her back straight against a hard plastic chair. At 29 years old, she stood just 5 feet and 3 inches tall in her uniform. Her 118-pound body was forged from pure discipline, a build that made many underestimate her power. She wore her blonde hair in a flawless bun, exactly to regulation. Her blue eyes swept across the room, catching details that everyone else missed. For 3 entire years, she had cleverly avoided this exact appointment, using every excuse from missions overseas to sudden illnesses. She had used every trick in the book to prevent a doctor from discovering the secrets she had guarded for over a decade. But a new mandatory wellness program for veterans left no escape. This was true even for a petty officer first class who would sooner eat nails than let her past be seen. The check-in screen cycled through the names: Johnson, Patterson, Mackenzie. The room smelled of burnt government coffee and the silent worry of men about to learn how their bodies had failed them. Veterans from the Korean War waited with shaking hands. Men who served in Vietnam stared into the distance, seeing things that were not there. Soldiers from Desert Storm shifted uncomfortably, favoring old wounds. The younger veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan could still pretend they were perfectly fine. Sloane's training kicked in as she scanned the room, a familiar and dangerous habit she could not stop. She spotted a Marine in the corner, shifting his body to ease the pressure on a bad left knee. A few chairs down, a sailor used a newspaper to hide his withdrawal tremors. Near the window, a soldier was charting all the exits and possible lines of attack. She recognized these signs because she lived them too. The screen changed. Barrett, S. K. She rose to her feet with a fluid motion, careful not to draw any eyes. 11 years of service had taught her how to become invisible when she needed to. She was the medic who blended into the background, the petty officer who never caused trouble, the woman who kept her gaze low and her secrets buried deep. But some secrets, the kind carved into your own skin, do not stay buried forever. Room 3B was at the end of a long, sterile hall. It was a typical exam room with white walls that seemed to absorb the silent confessions of human pain. A blood pressure cuff hung from a machine, looking like a tool designed to squeeze out the truth. The charts on the wall showed the bones and muscles Sloane had memorized in medic school 11 years ago. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds walked in carrying a tablet. He gave her the practiced smile of a doctor who had seen it all before. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, with some grey hair at his temples and a wedding ring worn smooth by years of nervous turning. He was the kind of doctor who was experienced enough to be good, but not so jaded that he had lost his kindness. "Petty Officer Barrett," he said, looking at his device. "Hospital Corpsman, first class, 11 years active duty, currently with—" His eyebrows rose in surprise. "SEAL Team 3. That is correct, sir. And how long have you been assigned to the team?" 2 weeks, sir." Reynolds typed a few notes. "This is just a yearly wellness screening, part of a new program. Do you have any injuries or anything that concerns you today?" "No, sir." "Are you on any medication?" "No, sir." "Any allergies that I should be aware of?" "No, sir." Reynolds glanced up from the tablet, really looking at her for the first time. "They assigned a woman who is 5 feet 3 inches tall to a SEAL team for full duty?" Sloane held his look without wavering. "Sir, I pass every single physical test required by the Navy." I have no doubt that you do. He set the tablet down on the counter. Very well, let us get your vital signs. I am going to need you to take off your blouse so I can check your heart and lungs. Sloane's hand stopped just before it touched the top button. This was the moment. The exact scene she had feared and escaped in her thoughts 1,000 times. She had booked appointments in the winter to have an excuse for long sleeves. She had asked for female doctors, thinking they might ask fewer questions. She had created fake schedule problems to avoid complete physicals. But on this day, there were no more escape plans. It was just her, a male doctor doing his duty, and a truth her own body would reveal. Her fingers finally started on the buttons. One after another they came loose, and she took off her blouse. She wore a standard navy T-shirt underneath, but it could not hide what lay beneath. Reynolds moved behind her with his stethoscope. "Please take a deep breath for me." She drew a breath, held it, and then exhaled slowly. The cold disc of the stethoscope pressed against her back. It was just a standard physical. As a corpsman, she had performed this same checkup on countless sailors. Yet being the patient felt like a strange and deep intrusion. "Good. Let's do that again. Hold on a moment." Reynolds' hand stopped moving. A heavy silence filled the small room for 3 long seconds, and then a fourth. Then came the fifth. Petty Officer Barrett. His tone had completely changed. The kind doctor was gone, replaced by a man with a sharp, professional intensity. "I am going to ask you to please take off your T-shirt." "Sir, the heart exam doesn't normally require. I have noticed something that needs a closer inspection. Please remove your shirt." His voice left no room for debate. There was no escape. Sloane pulled the shirt over her head. The scar was located high on her left shoulder. It showed a clear entry point on the front and a matching exit wound on her back. It was the kind of injury that told a complete story to anyone trained to read the signs of trauma. The edges were smooth, where military surgeons had carefully removed the damaged flesh. The scar tissue was clean, proof of the skilled hands that saved her arm, and maybe her life. But it was the incredible size of the injury that made Reynolds freeze. He walked around to her front, his eyes fixed on the mark. Then he did something unexpected. He used his fingers to estimate the size of the entry wound. He was mentally tracing the bullet's trajectory to the exit wound. "This is from a gunshot." "A high-powered rifle?" he stated, completely certain. The entry wound. "It's from a .338 caliber bullet. Probably a .338 Lapua Magnum." Sloane said nothing. "Petty officer, that is a sniper round. How in the world does a Navy medic—" The door swung open without any warning knock. Admiral James Morrison entered, and the entire mood of the room shifted. He was 68 years old, stood 6'2", and looked like a man who had been carrying heavy packs for 40 years. His grey hair was cut in a precise military style. He had the eyes of someone who had faced impossible decisions and learned to live with the outcomes. He was making his regular tour of the new wellness program, meeting the staff and shaking some hands. He was the friendly, public representative of the Navy's commitment to its people. He nodded at Reynolds, and then his eyes fell upon Sloane. His focus locked onto the scar. The world seemed to pause. Morrison's face showed 3 different emotions in less than 2 seconds. First came a flash of recognition, which was quickly replaced by shock. Then an expression that was a deep combination of sadness and incredible pride came over him. "Barrett," he said, his voice heavy with feeling. "Sloane Barrett." Sloane immediately stood at attention, despite not having her shirt on. "Sir." Morrison started to walk toward her. He was not trying to be intimidating. He was being careful. He walked toward her like he was approaching something very precious that was also extremely dangerous. That scar, he did not need to get any closer to see it. Its size and place on her body told him the entire story. Mike was the one who taught you how to shoot. It was not a question. It was a fact that carried the weight of a shared history. Sloane's throat felt tight. "Yes, sir." Reynolds looked back and forth between the Admiral and the petty officer, totally lost. "Admiral, you know this petty officer?" "Doctor," Morrison's voice was filled with 4 decades of authority, "I need 5 minutes alone with Petty Officer Barrett." "Sir, I am in the process of her physical." "5 minutes." Reynolds recognized a command when he heard one. He exited the room, and the door clicked shut behind him, sealing them inside. Morrison and Sloane stood about 3 feet from each other. The air between them was thick with things left unsaid. It was haunted by the memory of a funeral from 13 years ago. He was the officer who had given a folded American flag to a heartbroken widow and her young daughter. He had looked into the eyes of a 16-year-old girl with her arm in a sling, eyes that had seen far too much of life's harshness. "Mike Barrett," Morrison began, his voice much quieter now. "Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, Scout Sniper Platoon." He had 78 confirmed targets over 3 tours. He was the finest marksman I have ever seen, and he was my absolute best friend. "You were at the funeral, sir," Sloane replied, her voice soft but steady. "You gave my mum the flag. I was 16, just after my junior year of high school. My arm was in that sling. I recognize that mark. You got it about 6 months before your father died. The official report said it was a training accident. A rifle malfunctioned on the range, and shrapnel went right through your arm. You were lucky to keep it. I was lucky I made it at all. Mike never got over it. He always said he should have checked that rifle himself. He was certain he missed the warning signs of metal failure." Morrison paused for a moment. "He also mentioned that after you healed, you promised your mother you would never touch a weapon again." Sloane's jaw clenched. Even after 11 years of counseling, of telling herself she was past her father's death, the anger was always there. It was like a piece of steel lodged too close to her heart to ever be removed. If he felt so guilty, why did he deploy again? Why go back after only 6 months? Her voice came out sharper than she intended. Morrison was not bothered, because men like Mike do not know how to stop. We tell ourselves we are the protectors. We begin to believe we are the only people who can do the job. We think our talents are too important to keep at home. He took a deep breath. "It is the fiction we tell ourselves so we can keep doing the one thing we do well," he said. "And that one thing is what killed him." It did. Helmand Province, back in October of 2012. It began with a hidden explosive, followed by a major ambush. He was on watch for his patrol. He saw the trap, reported it, and then provided cover for his team to escape. He was fired on from every direction. He got every last Marine out of there safely, but he did not make it out himself. The sadness in Morrison's voice was heavy and real. His final radio transmission was just 4 words. "Marines are clear." "Out." Sloane squeezed her eyes shut, trying to breathe past the tightness in her chest. She opened them again. "I joined the Navy in 2014, 2 years after he died. I became a corpsman. I have served for 11 years. My entire service history is flawless, with excellent reviews and multiple deployments. I did everything by the rules, just how he would have wanted. My job is to save people. I honored the promise I gave my mother. And nobody is aware that you are a sharpshooter. No one knows that, sir." Morrison watched her face carefully. "Until right now. What is your current post?" "SEAL Team 3. I was assigned there 2 weeks ago." A flicker of memory appeared in Morrison's eyes. "I served with Team 3 30 years ago. Your commander is Blake Hawkins. He is a tough man, but a fair one who earned his rank. He will push you, but he will also protect you when it matters. I am not asking for any special treatment. Everybody needs someone watching their back." Morrison said, his voice firm. "Especially when they are hiding a secret as big as yours. Sloane, I have to ask you a question. I need you to think hard before you answer." She held her breath. "If your team is in serious trouble, and they need you, not the medic, but the marksman. The young woman, Mike Barrett, spent 4 years training. The one who can factor in wind, distance, and the Earth's spin from 200 meters. If they need that person, Sloane, and the only thing in your way is a promise made out of grief when you were 16, what will you do?" The question filled the quiet room. She saw the scar in her own reflection. A perfect entry and exit wound, a lasting reminder of the day the weapon failed, the day she was nearly killed learning the skills her father insisted she master. "I do not know, sir." "Yes, you do." Morrison's voice was soft but strong. "You know exactly what you will do. You are going to do what Mike would have. It is what every person in uniform does when that time arrives. You do what is necessary. The promise will have to be broken, and you will find a way to live with it. A broken promise is a small price to pay to avoid burying teammates you could have saved." Sloane looked him straight in the eye. "Is that what you did, sir?" "More times than I want to remember." He offered a sad smile. "Welcome to the club that no one ever volunteers to join. We have our meetings every night around 3 in the morning, whenever it is impossible to sleep." Morrison started for the door, then stopped and looked back. "Mike used to say something about teaching you to shoot, despite your mother's objections. He said, 'I am not teaching my daughter to be a killer. I am teaching her to be a guardian. One day people will need to be protected, and my daughter will be the only person there who can do it.'" Morrison put his hand on the doorknob. "I suspect that day is coming for you very soon, Sloane. When it gets here, do not hesitate. Mike would not want that." "Sir," Sloane said, which made him pause, "thank you for attending the funeral. It meant everything to my family that you were there. He was my brother. You are his daughter. That makes us family." Morrison pulled the door open. "Keep in touch. If you ever need anything at all, advice, someone to listen, or a little help with the chain of command, you call me. Anything. Is that clear?" "Understood, sir." And then he was gone. Reynolds came back a moment later, his professional mask firmly in place. He completed the physical with no more mention of the scar, and cleared her for full duty. He dismissed her with a handful of papers and a follow-up visit she had no intention of keeping. Sloane got dressed in silence, carefully buttoning her uniform, tucking in her shirt, and straightening her belt. In the mirror she appeared to be just another sailor after a routine physical, but she was not. Not any longer. Somebody else knew her secret, and a shared secret is never entirely safe. The SEAL Team 3 compound was on the Naval Amphibious Base in Coronado, a gritty facility born from pure effort. It was surrounded by concrete walls and high fences, with buildings worn down by salty air and constant use. The Pacific Ocean was a short distance away, a constant reminder where new operators learn that comfort is a fantasy and that pain is a powerful instructor. Sloane had been at the base for 14 days. She knew the layout, but she did not yet feel like she belonged. It was Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. The briefing room smelled of strong coffee, weapon lubricant, and men who thought a 5-mile run was a simple warm-up. 12 operators sat waiting. 11 of them turned to look as she came in. Commander Blake Hawkins was at the front of the room. He was 44 years old, with a face shaped by 2 decades of hard choices made in harsh places. His eyes saw everything and forgot nothing. He had 22 years of service, including 3 combat tours with this very team. He was the type of leader who commanded respect, because he had earned it many times. "Petty Officer Barrett, you are on time. Please take a seat." Sloane took a chair in the back row. It was the unofficial seat, reserved for the medic. Close enough to help, but far enough away to be out of the way. Gentlemen, Hawkins's voice cut through the low chatter. This is Hospital Corpsman First Class Sloane Barrett. She is our new medic for the team. She has served 11 years of active duty with 3 combat tours, 2 in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. Her focus is on combat medicine and advanced trauma support. She was sent to us with high praise from Naval Medical Command. The room fell silent. 12 sets of eyes were locked on her, measuring her skills against the team's needs. Chief Warrant Officer Hayes was the first to speak. He was 50, an old Marine who switched to the Navy for his own reasons. Everyone called him Gunny, a nickname from his former service. At 5 feet 3 inches tall, his voice was gravelly from a smoking habit he quit 10 years ago. Respectfully, Doc, can you carry a 60-pound medkit and a full combat load? Yes, Chief. That gear includes body armor, both front and back ceramic plates. Yes, Chief. In addition to your ammunition, water, and other supplies? Yes, Chief. Gunny leaned back and grunted. I guess we will find out on Friday. Senior Chief Petty Officer Wade Hollister was 2 seats away. At 48, he spoke very little, as if he had seen too much to waste his words. His call sign was Stone, because his expression gave nothing away. He was never rushed and never panicked under fire. Stone said nothing, just studied her with eyes that seemed to be weighing her very soul. Petty Officer First Class Declan Briggs was slouched down in his chair as if he owned the room. He was 32, with red hair and freckles that made him appear younger than he was. His voice easily carried from the back. They called him Frost for his composure in a gunfight. Right now, he just sounded skeptical. The last medic we had was 6'1" and 190 pounds, Frost noted, his disbelief obvious. And he struggled to keep up. No disrespect, but you are small, Sloane finished his sentence. I know. I can keep up. We are not carrying you out if you can't keep up, Frost muttered to his teammate, Petty Officer Dylan Garrett. Just so everyone knows the plan. Hawkins stopped the conversation. Barrett has passed every physical test the Navy has for this job. She is here because of her qualifications. Her place on this team will be earned by her actions. That rule is for every single person here. His eyes locked onto Sloane. Do you understand, Petty Officer? Perfectly clear, sir. Very good. The integration briefing is on Thursday. Physical training starts at 5:30 tomorrow morning. The ruck march is Friday, 12 miles with a full pack. Any questions? The room was silent. Dismissed. As the men stood up to file out, Sloane remained seated, pretending to study medical papers she already knew by heart. Stone paused in the doorway and turned back to her. Barrett. Yes, Senior Chief. Welcome to the team. Do not worry about Frost. He gives all the new people a hard time. I understand, Senior Chief. Stone studied her for a second longer, as if he could see the secret she was working so hard to hide. Then he walked away, leaving Sloane all alone in the quiet, empty room. She recalled Morrison's words about promises, the ones we keep and the ones we break. She knew a decision was coming soon. At 5:30 on Wednesday morning, the sky over Coronado was still black. A chill in the air was a gentle reminder that even Southern California has its seasons. 12 operators and 1 medic stood ready for their training, a standard SEAL warm-up designed to weed out anyone who was not completely dedicated. The session started with a 2-mile run followed by several exercises, all part of their routine combat conditioning. Sloane maintained a steady pace. She did not try to keep up with Frost and Garrett at the front, but she stayed well away from the back where someone might mistake it for weakness. She ran right in the middle of the pack, her breathing steady, conserving her strength. She could hear Frost and Garrett talking as they ran ahead. I will bet you $20 she drops out during the march on Friday. She has only been on the team for 2 weeks. That is not the same as hauling a full pack for 12 miles in the California desert. Sloane stayed silent, saving her breath. Words were meaningless. Her actions would be the only thing to prove her worth. Friday arrived with a clear sky and rising heat for the 12-mile march, each person carrying a pack that weighed at least 60 pounds, plus their equipment. Their starting point was in the desert east of the base, where the temperature was forecast to hit 95 degrees. The team assembled at 6 in the morning. As the sun climbed, the air was already getting warm. Sloane made one last adjustment to her pack. It was filled with medical supplies like intravenous bags, bandages, and tourniquets. Everything needed to save a life when a body is ready to fail. The pack weighed a total of 62 pounds, a heavy burden for her 118-pound frame. The first mile was easy. The second mile was just another day on the job. By the fourth mile, her shoulders were starting to ache. At the halfway point, a sharp pain began in her hips. By mile 8, every single step was a struggle of mind over body. But she had endured worse during her medic training, dragging 200-pound dummies across obstacle courses. She had done it during field training, treating fake injuries while smoke grenades and blank rounds went off around her. And she had done it for real on missions, carrying wounded men twice her size because there was no other option. She knew that pain goes away, but the shame of quitting would last a lifetime. At the 12th mile, she finally stepped over the finish line. Her official time was 2 hours and 41 minutes. It was not a record-setting pace. Frost and Garrett had finished 18 minutes before her. Stone and Gunny were 12 minutes faster, but she completed the entire course. She did it all on her own, without ever falling behind. Hawkins looked at his watch as she finished and gave her a small nod. "That is a solid time, Barrett." Gunny came over with a bottle of water. "You can handle the weight, that is for sure. But carrying a pack is not the same as being in a firefight." "I understand that, Chief. We will find out how you perform when bullets are flying." Monday was set aside for weapons qualification. The firing range was located 20 meters inland, away from the public where noise would not be an issue. Targets were set up at 50, 100, and 300 meters. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and hot metal, punctuated by the sharp crack of rifles. Sloane was only authorized to qualify with the Beretta M9 pistol. Her duties as a corpsman did not include rifle training. Medics carried pistols for self-defense, not for engaging the enemy. She fired 40 rounds, and every single one hit the target. She earned the rating of expert marksman. From the observation booth, Gunny watched her tight shot group and raised an eyebrow. "The Doc is an amazing shot with that pistol." Hawkins agreed with a nod and wrote something down. That skill could be useful if the enemy ever manages to get that close. The operators then began their rifle qualifications. They started with Monsieur 4 carbines, before switching to their primary weapon, the M40A 5 sniper rifle. Sloane stood behind the firing line, officially just watching, but in her head she was remembering. That rifle felt like an old friend. It was the same model her father had used, with the same stock and the same scope. It had the same weight and feel. Her fingers began to twitch with muscle memory, a reflex built from countless hours of practice. She could almost feel the New Mexico desert floor as her father's voice coached her on reading the wind. He taught her to sync her breathing with the beat of her own heart. Stone was aiming at a target 600 meters out. It was a standard NATO target, about the size of a man's torso. His first round missed, landing 8 inches to the left. Sloane's lips barely moved as she whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "If you pull left, adjust your right shoulder." Stone made the tiny correction. His next shot hit the dead center of the bullseye. Senior Chief Wade Hollister was standing only 5 feet away from Sloane, close enough to hear her soft advice. He turned his head slightly, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Sloane quickly looked away, but it was too late. Stone fired 4 more shots, and all of them hit the center. For a 600-meter target, that was truly outstanding shooting. When he was done, Stone walked past Sloane and leaned in to speak quietly. "Appreciate the wind call, Doc." Sloane's face remained a blank mask as she said nothing, but Stone knew that she had heard him. Men like him noticed small things like that, and they never forgot them. Thursday afternoon was for a medical drill on combat casualty care. This was the test that separated those who read the manuals from those who had treated wounds under fire. The training exercise simulated the aftermath of a makeshift bomb explosion. There were 2 casualties with shockingly realistic wounds and not enough medical supplies. To make things worse, an instructor fired blank rounds and threw smoke grenades to create a stressful, chaotic scene. Sloane moved on pure instinct and training. The first casualty had a severed femoral artery and was bleeding out fast. She had about 90 seconds before he would go into shock, and maybe 2 minutes before he would be dead. Her hands moved with expert speed. She pulled a tourniquet from her pack and secured it high on the thigh, well above the injury. She looped it once, threaded it through the buckle, and inserted the tightening rod. Then she began to twist it with all her might. The first casualty started screaming, a very convincing performance by the role-player. Sloane ignored him and kept twisting. Each turn cinched the band tighter, squeezing the artery and reducing the gushing blood to a small trickle. 3 full turns. Then 1 more. The bleeding stopped completely. From the moment she saw the wound, the entire action took her only 19 seconds. The official protocol allows for a 30-second window. The second casualty had a collapsed lung from air trapped in his chest cavity. It was a fatal injury that was slowly suffocating him. She needed to perform a needle decompression. She located the spot between his ribs, right on the mid-clavicular line, and took out a 14-gauge needle. She felt for the precise location through his uniform, confirmed her position, and then drove the needle in. There was a soft pop, then a hissing sound as the trapped air escaped. The pressure was gone, and the patient could breathe again. She immediately started an intravenous line, even as the instructor continued his simulated attack. She then packed his other wounds with combat gauze and administered morphine for the pain. She did all of this while thick smoke obscured her vision and the sound of blank rounds echoed around her. When the drill was finished, Gunny came over to inspect the casualties. He looked over her work and checked her times. "That was damn good, Doc. The best I have ever seen from a new medic." Hawkins nodded his head in agreement. "Barrett is very, very good at what she does." Frost stood nearby with his arms folded, staring at her with a skeptical expression. "Medical skills are great. They are essential. But we need operators who can shoot back when the situation turns bad. A combat medic is a very different thing from a combat operator." He said it loud enough for everyone on the training field to hear, making it clear the message was for her. Sloane heard every word and filed the comment away. She was not angry or offended, it was just more information. She understood their concern. They had lost medics in the past. They were good men, brave men. Medics were masters at saving lives, but they were not warriors. In a firefight, they could become a liability instead of an asset. The team looked at the new medic and thought the same thing. "Are you the one who is going to get us all killed?" It was a reasonable question, and she knew words would not be enough. She would have to prove herself with her actions, and that moment was coming very soon. The team received their mission details on a Friday afternoon. They gathered in the secure briefing room. The walls were lined with screens displaying satellite photos and maps with GPS coordinates. There was also secret intelligence from sources Sloane was not allowed to know about. Hawkins stood at the front of the room, holding a small remote. He looked extremely serious. He said, "Gentlemen, Doc, we deploy Monday at 4 in the morning. Our destination is a secret until we are airborne. This is a rescue mission. 2 American security contractors were taken captive 6 days ago near the border of Syria and Iraq. Our latest intel says they are in this location. The main screen changed. A remote village appeared on the screen. It was a small group of buildings in a large, empty desert. A single dirt road led in and out of the town. "We think there are between 8 and 12 enemies," the commander explained. "They are a mix of local fighters and foreigners. They are all well armed and very determined." He took a breath. "The people we are rescuing are very important. The government needs them back." "Our mission is to bring our people home," Hawkins said, pointing at the map. He explained the plan and the route. "We will begin our approach tonight at 10 o'clock. We will move on foot, starting 2 kilometers north of the village. Stone, you will set up on that ridge and provide sniper support from 800 meters. The 6-man team will go in and get our targets. Then we move to the main pickup point." "You will have only 90 minutes on the ground," he said. Frost then spoke up. "Sir, what will the doc be doing?" Hawkins looked directly at Sloane. "Barrett will stay here at our base with the communication gear. This is the normal procedure for a new medic on their first mission. She will listen to the radio and be ready for any injuries." Sloane knew this was coming. It was the smart and safe decision. But a voice in her mind, sounding like her father, said, "They don't trust you. You have to show them what you can do." Hawkins then spoke to her again. "You are in charge of all medical preparations. I need you to be ready for the absolute worst-case scenario. That means bullet wounds, shrapnel, burns, or anyone who collapses from the heat. The last team meeting is Monday morning before we go. We will discuss the medical plan and inspect our equipment then." "Yes, sir. Are there any more questions?" Hawkins looked around the silent room. "All right. The medical briefing is at 7 in the morning on Monday. Gear check is at 8. We will review the plan at 9. The full rehearsal is at 1 in the afternoon. Get some sleep. Our work starts on Monday. You are dismissed." The team members began to stand up and exit the room. The easy conversation from before the meeting was gone. The reality of the mission had set in. The men were now in their serious, professional mindset. Stone was the last one to leave. He walked over to Sloane as she was putting away her laptop and notes. "Barrett." "Yes, Senior Chief?" "Have you ever actually been in a real combat zone?" he asked. "I'm talking about actual fighting, not a training exercise." "3 tours, Senior Chief. I served 2 in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. Each deployment was for 6 months." "But did you see combat, or were you on a big, secure base?" "I treated injured soldiers right after firefights. Our small base was hit by mortars twice. I also went on 3 convoy missions that were hit by roadside bombs and attacked both times." Stone listened and nodded slowly while he considered her response. He seemed to be thinking, Monday may not happen the way she thinks it will. A base camp is not always safe. He said out loud, "How good are you with that M9 pistol you have?" "Extremely good, Senior Chief. Good. Keep it with you always." He started to leave, then stopped. "That wind call you made at the shooting range, for 600 meters and 8-inch adjustment. You made that calculation very quickly." Sloane looked him straight in the eye. "It was just simple observation, Senior Chief. I was watching the flags and the heat waves coming off the ground." "I see. Observation," Stone said, with a blank expression. "Keep observing, Doc. Sometimes seeing the small details is what helps us survive." After he said that, he left her by herself in the room. She looked at the satellite photo on the screen. It was the place where everything would change in only 3 days. A place where an old promise would meet a new reality. She touched her shoulder, feeling the faint outline of a scar under her uniform. She had carried a promise for 11 years. In 3 days that promise would be put to the test. She was not certain she could keep it, but she could still hear what her father had told her. He had given her the answer long ago. Some promises must be kept no matter what. Others are meant to be broken when the time is right. Monday would show which kind of promise she had made. The C-130 transport plane landed at a secret airbase. It was located in a part of the world between Syria and places that are not on any map. The temperature was a scorching 118 degrees. The desert air felt like breathing inside an oven. Sloane walked off the ramp with 62 pounds of medical equipment on her back. The heat felt like a heavy weight pushing down on her. The team moved with practiced efficiency, checking their equipment and weapons. It was a routine they all knew by heart. She found a small patch of shade near a concrete barrier. She drank some water. Then she checked her medical kit for the third time. Every single piece of gear was exactly where it should be. She organized the tools of her trade: tourniquets, bandages for severe bleeding, intravenous sets, chest seals, and morphine. Inside a tent that smelled like diesel and sand, Hawkins gave them the newest information. The news was not good. Their targets were at the location, but there were now 15 to 20 guards. That was much more than they had anticipated, but the mission was still happening. When Hawkins asked for questions, Stone asked about the route through Xville. The main helicopter landing zone would stay the same. The alternate landing spot was 3 kilometers to the north if they were discovered. The helicopter would show up 30 minutes after they radioed for it. The rules of the fight were clear. Any hostile act was considered a direct threat. Their goal was to rescue the hostages and keep their team safe, using only the force needed. Hawkins looked at every team member and said, "This is a rescue, not a revenge mission. We go in, get our people, and get out." The briefing also covered schedules, distress signals, and radio use. Sloane committed every single detail to memory. Her assignment was simple. She would stay at the camp, monitor the radio, and be ready to treat any injuries. It was a protected, low-risk job for the team's new medic, but she knew that in war things rarely stay simple. The team left at 4 in the morning in a convoy of 6 vehicles, heading to a staging point 12 kilometers from the target. The landscape looked like it was from another world. There was just red sand, rock formations, and a shimmering heat that made the horizon look like it was melting. Sloane was in the third vehicle, sitting across from Frost and Garrett. No one spoke a word. Every man's face showed deep concentration. The friendly men she had met were gone, replaced by determined soldiers. At the staging point, the vehicles formed a defensive perimeter and were covered with camouflage nets. The team immediately set up guard posts for security. This location would be their base of operations, the place where Sloane would wait while her teammates went to do the dangerous part of the job. As she began to set up her medical station, Stone walked over. He carried his M4A5 rifle so naturally that it seemed like it was a part of his body. He spoke first. "How are you doing, Doc?" "I am okay, Senior Chief," she replied. "This heat is something else." Stone simply nodded. His gaze moved to the medical gear she had laid out on a blanket. He saw how perfectly arranged it was, with every item placed for easy reach. "You have been in this situation before," he observed. It was a statement of fact, not a question. "This is my third deployment, Senior Chief. The country is different, but the work is always the same." She had served in Afghanistan and Iraq, treating everything from shrapnel injuries and blast wounds to soldiers hurt in combat. Sloane met his gaze without flinching. "I know what it looks like when things fall apart." Stone paused for a long moment, then asked something she never expected. "What is your assessment of the plan?" A senior operator would not ask a medic for tactical advice. "I think 15 to 20 hostiles is a big ask for a 7-man team," she answered honestly. "Yes," Stone said, his stare fixed on a distant, unseen target. "It is." He turned and left, but Sloane had the distinct feeling she had just passed a serious test. The sun cooked the landscape from above. The temperature soared to 122 degrees. Sloane forced herself to drink water and take electrolyte pills. She watched her own condition as if she were a patient. At 1600 hours, Petty Officer Dylan Garrett staggered as he passed his vehicle. Sloane's attention was instantly drawn to him. Her medical instincts took control before a conscious thought could form. Garrett was only 24, a tough operator with no medical history, but right now his face was flushed a deep red. He was no longer sweating, and his skin was completely dry in the crushing heat. These were the textbook signs of a deadly medical crisis. Sloane closed the gap between them in 4 quick strides. "Garrett, sit down," he mumbled. "I am fine, Doc." Her reply was firm. "Sit down now." The sharp authority in her voice made him comply immediately. Sloane pulled out a thermometer and checked his pulse, his skin, and his awareness. His pulse was a rapid 130, but it felt weak and thready. His skin was alarmingly hot and dry, and his pupils seemed a little too wide. This was not simple heat exhaustion. This was heat stroke, an emergency that could end a life in mere minutes. "Chief Hayes!" she yelled, her voice slicing through the camp's relative quiet. The gunny hurried over to them. "What is going on over here?" "It is heat stroke," Sloane said with urgency. "His core temperature is probably 105 or more. He needs an intravenous line now, and we have to cool him down immediately." The gunny stared at Garrett, then looked back at Sloane with clear doubt in his eyes. "Are you sure? He looked perfectly fine 10 minutes ago." Sloane replied, "Heat stroke can strike in an instant. He is not sweating, and that is a terrible sign. We have maybe 10 minutes before seizures start." Sloane was already preparing the intravenous kit. "I need someone to get Commander Hawkins. This mission has to be delayed until Garrett is stable." The gunny did not argue. He rushed off to find the commander. Sloane expertly slid the intravenous needle into a large vein. Saline fluid began to drip into his arm. She soaked several towels in a cooler of icy water and placed them on Garrett's neck, in his armpits, and on his groin, where major arteries run close to the skin. Frost came running with more water. "What can I do to help?" he asked. "Keep these towels ice cold and wet. Change them out every 2 minutes. We need to bring his temperature down, but not too fast. Going too quickly could cause other problems." Hawkins arrived on the scene. Sloane gave him a quick summary. "It is heat stroke, sir. Garrett needs at least 30 minutes of medical attention before he can be moved. I strongly recommend we delay our departure." Hawkins observed Garrett for a moment. The young soldier's colour was already improving as the intravenous fluids began to work. "What do you project his status will be in 30 minutes?" he asked Sloane. "With successful treatment, he will be conscious and stable, but not fit for combat. I recommend he stays here at the base camp." "Can you handle his care here by yourself?" Hawkins asked. "Yes, sir," she confirmed without hesitation. "That makes more sense than trying to transport him," Hawkins concluded. "We will delay our departure by 45 minutes. Garrett stays behind. Barrett, you are in charge of him?" "Yes, sir." The team adjusted to the new plan without a word of complaint. They all understood the dangers of the desert heat and how fast it could turn lethal. About a half-hour later, Garrett was sitting up and drinking water on his own. His skin had returned to a normal colour as his body temperature finally dropped. He looked over at Sloane, his face a mask of embarrassment. "I am sorry, Doc. You have nothing to apologize for. The heat does not care how tough you are." "How did you know something was wrong?" Garrett asked. "I did not even feel sick until you were already checking me." "It is a combination of training, experience, and paying close attention," Sloane said, checking his vital signs again. "You stopped sweating, your skin was flushed, and you were unsteady on your feet. Those were all the clues I needed." Frost kneeled beside them. I was standing right next to him, and I missed all of that. We are trained to notice different things, Sloane replied with a slight shrug. A bit later, while the team prepared to leave, the gunny approached her. "You probably just saved his life, Doc. I was just doing my job, Chief." "Most medics would not have noticed until he collapsed," he said. For the first time, she heard a new note of respect in the gunny's voice. "You have got some seriously sharp eyes." The team finally moved out at 5:30 that evening. Sloane watched as they disappeared into the desert terrain. There were 7 operators, each one moving like a ghost. Stone was on his rifle, Hawkins was in the lead, and Frost and the others moved in a flawless tactical line. She was now by herself with Garrett and the drivers. The radio was her only connection to what was happening out in the immense desert. Sloane settled in and started to wait. Waiting was a major part of a combat medic's life, and it was usually the hardest part. She knew that people she cared for were walking toward danger, and she was powerless to help them until they brought back the injured. If they could bring them back, at 7 that evening, the gunny's voice crackled over the radio. "Base, this is entry 1. We are 2 kilometers from the target. Chief Hayes is walking with a limp. I need the doc's assessment." Sloane keyed the microphone. The chief described his pain. "I twisted my ankle crossing a dry creek bed. I am fine." "Can you put all of your weight on it?" Sloane asked. "Yes." "Does it hurt more when you push off or when you plant your foot?" There was a brief pause. "When I push off? Can you see or feel any swelling?" After a longer silence, Sloane shut her eyes. She could visualize the injury perfectly. It was a grade 2 ankle sprain, possibly even a grade 3. It was the kind of injury that adrenaline could mask, but it was also the kind that could fail you at the worst possible moment. "Commander Hawkins, this is Barrett. I recommend Chief Hayes be reassigned. That ankle could give out in close quarters combat. He must avoid any sudden sideways movements or sprinting." Hawkins's voice came back. "Understood. Hayes, you are on Overwatch security. You will not enter the building." The chief started to protest. "Sir, I am still able to—" "That is not a request, Chief." The gunny's irritation was obvious even through the static, but he followed the command. Sloane released the microphone button and glanced at Garrett, who was listening from his cot. "You just pulled Gunny Hayes from the main assault," Garrett said quietly. "He is not going to be happy about that," Sloane replied. "I would rather have him angry at me than have his ankle fail in a firefight and get somebody else killed." "That is a fair point," Garrett conceded. By 8 in the evening, the sky was completely black. The radio went silent as the team approached the target. Sloane inspected her medical station for the 4th time. She had stretchers laid out, intravenous bags ready to go, and her trauma kit open to handle multiple casualties. She had learned that harsh lesson back in Afghanistan. Always hope for the best, but you must prepare for the absolute worst, because hope has never stopped a man from bleeding out. At 10 that evening the quiet was violently broken. "Contact! Contact! We are taking fire!" The radio exploded into a mess of overlapping voices. She could hear the distinct crack of gunfire in the background. It was not the disciplined sound of an ambush they had planned. It was the pure chaos of a mission that had gone completely sideways. Hawkins's voice cut through the noise. "Entry team, report! We are pinned down! The intel was wrong! There are more than 20 of them in here." She heard a deafening boom, most likely a rocket-propelled grenade. Then came the 3 words she always dreaded to hear. "Frost is hit. Frost is down." Sloane was on her feet in a second. Every muscle in her body pulled tight. Everything in her screamed to run, to help, to do something. But she was 12 kilometers away, completely helpless. Then Hawkins was back on the radio. "Doc, we need you here now." "Vehicle 2 is heading your way." "Sir, "I am on my way," she responded. She snatched her aid bag. It weighed 60 pounds, lighter than her main pack, but it held every piece of gear needed to save a life. The truck roared into camp, and Sloane was climbing aboard before it even screeched to a halt. "Go!" she yelled to the driver. They tore off across the open desert. There were no roads, only rocks, sand, and endless darkness. Using night vision goggles, the driver cut through the pitch-black landscape. Sloane held the door frame tightly, her hands recognizing each piece of medical equipment by touch alone. She knew where to find the tourniquets, the clotting agents, and the intravenous supplies. They blazed through 12 kilometers in an incredible 8 minutes. The vehicle could go no further without being detected. That last kilometer would be her journey to make alone. Sloane leaped from the moving truck, hitting the ground in a full sprint. The 60 pounds of gear on her back seemed to weigh nothing at all. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, a potent source of energy. Just ahead, the distinct sounds of a firefight echoed in the night. She could see the bright flashes of gunfire, easily telling apart the pop of AK-47s from the heavier sound of American M4s. When she reached the squad, they were hunkered down behind a crumbling wall. Frost was on his back, a large dark stain rapidly spreading across his upper leg. It was a severe femoral injury, dangerously close to the artery. He had maybe 90 seconds before shock would take him. With less than 2 minutes to save his life, Sloane slid across the dirt to reach him. Bullets whizzed just inches above her, but she didn't so much as blink. Her focus narrowed to the patient, the wound, and the task at hand. "Frost," she called out, "look at me. You are going to be fine." His eyes were wide with fear. "Doc, I cannot feel my leg." "You are losing a lot of blood. I am going to fix that. Just stay with me." She pulled a tourniquet from her med pack. Her hands worked with a speed and confidence that only comes from countless hours of rehearsal. She placed it high on his thigh, well above the injury. In a combat zone, this was the only viable way to handle this type of bleeding. She wrapped the band once around his leg. She threaded the strap through the buckle and pulled it as tight as she possibly could. Then she inserted the windlass rod into its designated slot. This was the most crucial step. She twisted the rod for one full rotation. She twisted it again, and the band constricted even tighter, biting deep into his muscle to clamp down on the artery. Frost cried out from the intense pain. Sloane kept turning the rod. A third rotation, and then a fourth. The flow of bright red blood which had been pouring out began to slow to a weak trickle. A moment later it stopped completely. She secured the windlass rod in its holding clip. She checked the wound again. The bleeding was controlled. She felt for his pulse below the tourniquet. There was none, which was exactly the result she needed. Her hands had moved with flawless precision, applying the tourniquet in just 19 seconds from when she first reached him. The bleeding was finally under control. "You are stable for the moment." Frost was taking short, labored breaths. "The pain is incredible," he gasped. "That just means you are still alive. Staying alive hurts. Dying is easy." She swiftly inserted an IV line, pushing fluids to keep his blood pressure from crashing. "You will be okay." At that moment, another burst of gunfire erupted, sounding much closer than before. Hawkins scrambled into position next to her. "We have to get out of here. The enemy is trying to flank us. Can he move?" "No, we will need to carry him." "Doc, they have us pinned down. We are completely stuck." The next series of shots came from an entirely different direction, a rooftop nearly 280 meters away. Sloane saw the telltale flash from a rifle. She registered the steep angle and knew the shooter had a perfect line of sight on Hawkins. Time itself seemed to stretch and slow down, just like in her father's old war tales. Her vision sharpened with incredible clarity. The enemy marksman was being patient, a clear sign of a trained professional. Hawkins was completely unaware of the threat. He was focused on Frost, leaving his own body dangerously exposed. The shot was coming, likely within the next 5 seconds. Frost's M4 rifle was lying just 3 feet away from her. It had a standard scope, a full magazine, and the safety was off. Sloane's eyes darted from the rifle to Hawkins and then back to the distant rooftop. She could almost hear her father's voice, as if he were standing beside her. When the moment comes, you cannot hesitate. You must act. Thinking is what gets you killed. Then she heard the voice of her mother. Promise me you will never touch a gun again. She recalled Morrison's question from long ago. What are you going to do? Sloane's hand shot out and grabbed the rifle. Her body seemed to be moving on its own. It was pure muscle memory, a skill she had perfected over thousands of hours of practice. It was an ability ingrained in her since she was a little girl. She checked the chamber and confirmed a round was loaded. She peered through the scope. She instantly calculated for distance and wind. 280 meters. The target was elevated. A light breeze was blowing from the east. The 5.56mm bullet would have very little drop at that range. She raised the rifle to her shoulder. It felt perfectly familiar, like a part of her own arm. It felt like she had returned home. The gunny noticed her. Doc, what on earth are you doing? Sloane's entire world condensed into the small circle of the scope. The crosshairs and the target were all that existed. The enemy sniper was just a dark silhouette in the dimming light. He was in a kneeling position, and she could see his rifle clearly. She began to regulate her breathing. In for 4 seconds, hold for 7, out for 8. Her heart rate started to slow. She would fire the shot in the quiet space between her heartbeats. For one perfect, silent instant, the man was perfectly centered in her sights. Hawkins looked over and saw the weapon pointed in his general direction. Barrett Sloane squeezed the trigger in a smooth, fluid motion her father had taught her. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder. The bullet took 2.1 seconds to travel. The enemy sniper was thrown backward and vanished from the roof. An eerie silence fell over their position. Distant gunfire continued, with men shouting in Arabic and Stone returning fire. But for their small group, everything went quiet. Frost could only stare in utter disbelief. My God, did that actually happen? Sloane carefully set the rifle back on the ground. She returned to Frost's side to monitor him. His pulse was at 110. His blood pressure was stable. You need evacuation, but you are holding steady for now. Hawkins was frozen, his gaze shifting from the empty rooftop to Sloane. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Sloane looked directly at him. My father taught me, sir. That was a shot from 280 meters. Yes, sir, I know. It was a moving target, and you were under fire. Yes, sir. Gunny moved in closer. Who in the world is your father? Sloane paused for 3 very long seconds. This was the secret she had guarded for 11 years. It was the part of her life she had tried to run from. It was the family legacy she never asked for. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, a Marine Scout sniper. Gunny's face turned white as the name registered. He was old enough to know the stories. Mike Barrett, the one and only. He was a legend in Helmand Province. Sloane just gave him a slow, deliberate nod. Oh my goodness. Gunny looked from the rifle to Sloane and back toward the roof. He was the one who trained you? For 4 years, from the time I was 12 until I was 16, and you chose to be a medic. I gave my mother my word that I would not touch a gun after he died. I broke that promise today. Hawkins was trying to process it all. You just saved my life. I was only doing my job, sir. My job is to ensure every member of this team makes it home alive. Your job is to be a medic. Sloane checked Frost's wound again, then the clear fluid in the IV bag. I took care of that duty too. Another volley of shots was a harsh reminder of their present danger. Hawkins immediately got on the radio. "We are moving from this position now. Stone, you and Gunny get Frost on a stretcher. Barrett, you are with me. We will provide covering fire while we fall back." "Sir, I should stay with Frost. You just told me he is stable." "What I need right now is someone who can hit a target from 300 meters away. Can you do that?" Sloan picked up the rifle and checked its mechanism one last time. "Yes, sir." They started their withdrawal. It was a controlled retreat, a kind of organized chaos. Stone and Gunny carried the stretcher, holding Frost. Sloan and Hawkins covered their rear. An enemy squad emerged unexpectedly from the east. 4 men were moving through the wreckage of the buildings. Sloan was the first one to spot them. Enemy spotted on the right at 150 meters. "There are 4 of them." She brought the rifle up. She fired 2 quick shots for each man, aiming for the center of their bodies. 1 is down, 2 are down. In a span of just 4 seconds, all 4 enemy combatants were neutralized. Hawkins could only stare at her in complete amazement. "Where have you been hiding all this time?" "Right here, in plain sight, sir." They made it to the extraction point. They loaded Frost into a vehicle and called for a medevac helicopter. It was on its way and would be there in about 10 minutes. As they waited, Sloan continued to treat Frost. She rechecked the tourniquet and applied a fresh dressing. She watched for any signs of dangerous swelling and adjusted his intravenous drip. She kept up a steady stream of conversation to make sure he remained conscious. "Doc," Frost said in a low voice, "I am so sorry I ever doubted you. You had every reason to. I had not earned your trust yet." "Well, you have certainly earned it now. I know you would have done the same thing for me." A cloud of dust and sand erupted as the helicopter landed. They gently moved Frost onto the aircraft. It lifted into the air and was swallowed by the night. The team sat in the silence as the adrenaline of the fight began to fade. Stone approached Sloan with his sniper rifle on his back. He mentioned the first shot she took. "The enemy at 280 meters. I had him in my sights as well. I was about to pull the trigger when your shot hit him. It was a flawless shot, right through his center." "Thank you, Senior Chief." "Do not thank me. Just answer a question for me. Before tonight, how many times had you fired your weapon in a real firefight?" Sloan paused to think. She recalled the countless training days with her father. There had been so many. She had fired thousands of practice rounds. But in a live combat situation, in a real battle, tonight was her very first time. Stone stood perfectly still. "Your very first shot in combat was from 280 meters, at a moving enemy, while you were taking fire, and you hit him on the first try?" "Yes, Senior Chief." Mike Barrett was an excellent teacher. Yes, he was. A memory seemed to cross Stone's face. "I met your dad once. We were at a joint training exercise in 2011 at Camp Pendleton. He was the most talented shooter I have ever seen. He told me that he was teaching his daughter to shoot. He said you had a very special gift for it. He even said you were better than he was at your age." Sloan felt her throat tighten. Did he really say that? He was so proud of you. He said you had the steadiest hands he had ever seen on a young person. He said you had a natural feel for the math involved. Stone paused for a moment. He also mentioned you promised to never use that talent, that you decided to heal people, not to harm them. I did, but tonight changed all of that. Your dad would have understood. He would have insisted on it. He trained you to be a protector, which is exactly what you did." They returned to the camp in total silence. Sloan was lost in her own mind, feeling the immense weight of her decision. She had broken her promise. She had used the deadly talent her father gave her. She had taken a man's life. The logical side of her knew it was the only option, Hawkins would be dead if she had hesitated. Maybe Frost would be too. But that logic did not make the heavy feeling in her chest go away. Back on base, Hawkins called everyone for a meeting. "Let us review what just happened. The information we had was totally wrong. We faced way more enemies than we planned for. Frost was hit. Doc saved him with a tourniquet in less than 20 seconds. Then she saved my life with a shot that came out of nowhere. After that, she provided cover for our escape and eliminated 4 more enemies." He turned and looked directly at Sloane. "Barrett, your service record says you have no combat history." "I do not, sir. I have only ever patched up combat injuries. That is a different universe of skills." "Well, it is not any more." Hawkins folded his arms across his chest. "This is my question. Can you perform like that again if we ask you to?" Sloane met his stare. "Yes, sir." "Without any hesitation?" "Without any hesitation." Hawkins gave her a long, slow nod. "If that is the case, we need to discover what you can do. What I saw tonight tells me your abilities are far greater than we realized." Stone finally added his thoughts. "Commander, I would like permission to officially test the Doc's shooting ability. We need to understand who is on this team." "I agree. Tomorrow morning at 0800. A full workup." Hawkins looked at the other team members. "Does anybody in here have an issue with that?" The entire room remained quiet. The uncertainty from 2 weeks ago had evaporated. It was replaced by curiosity and a new, powerful respect. Gunny carefully lifted his hand. "I just have one question for you, Doc. Why did you keep it secret? Why did you not let us know you had that ability?" Sloane inhaled deeply. "Because after my father passed away, I promised my mother I would never handle a weapon again. I came into the Navy to save people, not to hurt them. I kept that promise for 11 years. I broke it tonight because I could not sit there and let Commander Hawkins die. I have to come to terms with my decision, and I have to tell my mother. But if I had to make the choice again, I would do the same thing." "Do you think your mum will understand?" Gunny inquired. "I am not sure, Chief," she said, "but I truly hope that she does." The team went their separate ways, tired and still trying to process what they had witnessed. Under the night sky, Sloane stared at her phone, at her mother's name on the screen. She just was not ready to make that call yet. She had no words. Instead, she called Morrison, who answered on the first ring. He said, "Sloane, I heard what went down. Hawkins was on the phone with me an hour ago. He asked me all about Mike teaching you. I gave him the whole background." Morrison stopped for a moment, then said, "So you finally broke your promise." Sloane told him yes, and then she explained everything. She told him about Garrett's heat exhaustion, Frost's leg wound, the enemy on the roof, the shot she made, and their frantic escape. When she was done, Morrison was silent for a while. He finally spoke. "Your father prepared you for exactly this, Sloane. He did not want you to be a killer. He wanted you to be a protector. You kept your team safe tonight. That is all he ever wanted. That is what all that training was for." When Sloane brought up her mother, Morrison tried to soothe her fears. "Your mother is much stronger than you give her credit for. She was married to a Marine, and she knew the life. She knows what is necessary." His voice got softer. "Mike would have been so unbelievably proud of you." He complimented her on the shot, the people she saved, and the hard choice she had to make. He said, "I am proud of you." Sloane said that it did not feel like a moment to be proud. Morrison understood perfectly. It never does, not the first time. It never really feels that way, if I am being honest. But you find a way to live with it, because the alternative is to live with the memory of the teammates you could not save. You see that now. Sloane closed her eyes. "I see," she answered. He told her to get some sleep, since her test was the next morning. He told her to show them all the things Mike taught her and to stop concealing her talent. She only said, "Yes, sir." Morrison then said, "And Sloane, you really should call your mother. She should hear this from you before anyone else tells her." When the call ended, Sloane sat in the darkness by herself for another hour before she found the strength to make the call. Her mother picked up the phone on the fourth ring. It was very late in California, long after midnight. She said, "Sloane, is everything okay?" Sloane responded, "Mum, I have something that I need to tell you." A quiet moment passed between them. Then her mother said, "You used a gun." It was not a question. It was the statement of a mother who knew. Sloane asked her how she knew. Her mother said, "I know my own child, and I always had a feeling this day would come. Just tell me what took place." So Sloane told her the entire story, briefly but honestly. After she finished talking, her mother was silent for a long time. Sloane could hear her breathing softly, and maybe what sounded like quiet crying. Sloane said, "Mum, I am so sorry. I know I broke my promise." But her mother's voice was strong when she finally replied, "Stop it. You made that promise to me as a 16-year-old girl right after your dad died. You were only a child. You are not a child any more. You are a woman who saved people tonight. You are your father's daughter, a person who can heal and a person who can protect." Sloane said, "But I took a life." Her mother gently said, "No, you protected a life. There is a very big difference. Your motivation is what is important. The circumstances are important. You did not do it out of anger or for fun. You did it because your commander was about to be killed." Her mother's voice trembled a little. "Your father taught you how to do that because he knew this could happen, that you might be forced to make this choice. He would be so proud that you made the right decision." Tears started to flow down Sloane's face as she said, "I miss him so much, Mum." Her mother's voice became gentle. "I do too, honey, every single day. But he is still here with you. He is in your ability, in the decision you made, and in the people you saved." After a brief pause, she said, "I am so proud of you. I worry, but I am proud." Sloane said, "I love you, Mum." Her mother said, "I love you too. Now, please, just be sure you make it home safe." And then the conversation was over. Sloane sat by herself in the calm of the desert night. She cried, letting out all of the sorrow and relief that she had held inside. When she finished, she wiped her eyes, took a long drink of water, and went to check on Garrett one last time. The following day they would evaluate her skills to find out what her father had spent 4 years patiently teaching her. Tomorrow she would show them everything she was capable of. The time for hiding was finished. She was her father's daughter, a gifted medic and a deadly shot with a rifle. The sun rose far too early. Sloane had been up since 5 o'clock, barely getting any sleep. By 8, the entire range was prepared. Targets were set from 600 to 800 meters, then 1,000. Stone waited with an M40, a 5 rifle. The entire team gathered to watch. This felt less like a test and more like a performance. "The commander wants to see what you can do, and that is our job today," Stone said, handing her the weapon. "Are you comfortable with this rifle?" Sloane replied, "Yes, Senior Chief. My dad had an M40A3. It is an older version of the same system. The mechanics are identical." Stone gave a small nod. "Understood. First shot is at 600 meters. We have a gentle breeze, maybe 5 miles per hour from the west." It was her chance to prove herself. Sloane took the rifle, feeling its familiar weight. She lay on the ground, set up the bipod, and placed her cheek against the stock. Peering through the scope, she started her breathing cycle. The target became crystal clear. She calculated the wind and the bullet drop in her head, then made a tiny adjustment to the scope. Her finger settled on the trigger. She waited for the perfect calm between her heartbeats, that brief moment of total stillness. Then she squeezed. Stone, observing through a spotting scope, announced, "Center mass. A perfect shot. Let's try again. 800 meters." Sloane adjusted her scope again, running new numbers. At this distance the bullet would fall much further, and the wind was a bigger problem. She fired, he announced. A hit on the upper torso. Stone's voice was steady and professional. 1,000 meters. Let us see how you handle that. 1,000 meters was over half a mile away. At that range, the environment becomes a huge factor. Shooting becomes less about science and more of an art. Sloane had practiced this exact shot with her father in New Mexico, in a place she knew by heart. But this new environment was a different challenge, with its own unique altitude and air pressure. Sloane took her time. She watched the heat waves shimmer off the desert floor through her scope, using them to read the wind's behavior. She calculated the bullet's path. It would drop nearly 5 feet at this range. After a large adjustment to her scope, she kept her breathing steady and her heart rate calm. She found that perfect, silent moment between two heartbeats, a tiny slice of time that seemed to stretch on forever. She fired. The bullet travelled for 2 long seconds, carving a high arc over the desert. Stone was quiet, watching intently through his scope. After 5 seconds, he finally said, "Dead center, a flawless shot." Behind them, Gunny let out a soft whistle and said, "Good heavens, Doc." Hawkins approached and asked, "Barrett, give it to me straight. What is your maximum effective range? What is the longest shot you have ever made?" She replied, "Training with my father, I made consistent hits at 1,200 meters, sir. I could do it reliably." 1,200 meters. Hawkins looked over at Stone. "That is truly world-class shooting." "That is well beyond what most military snipers achieve," Stone added. "Our best marksmen hit targets at 800 to 1,000 meters. Hitting 1,200 meters takes incredible skill, top-tier equipment, and perfect conditions." "And she just hit 1,000 with an unfamiliar rifle," Sloane said quietly. "My father taught me the importance of patience. Hawkins considered this new information. This changes the game for us." Stone laid out the situation. "We have a medic who is also an elite sharpshooter. We need to find a way to utilize both of her talents. The trick is making sure one job does not get in the way of the other." Then he offered his solution. "We can give her 2 official duties, combat medic and designated marksman. This has been considered before. We just never had anyone who could do both, until now." "What are your thoughts on that, Barrett?" Hawkins asked. Sloane set her rifle down and faced her team. These were the same men who had underestimated her just 3 weeks ago. Now she saw only professional respect in their eyes. "Sir, I joined the Navy to save lives. That will always be my first priority. But I have learned that sometimes saving a life requires you to eliminate a threat. I am ready to serve this team in whatever way is most effective. If that means doing both jobs, then I will do it." Hawkins looked at Stone, Gunny, and the others. He said, "Let's see a show of hands. Who supports Barrett as our combat medic and designated marksman?" Immediately, every hand in the group went up. "Then it is settled," Hawkins announced. "Barrett, this is effective immediately. You are officially the team medic and our backup marksman. Stone remains our primary sniper. You will handle medical duties and provide precision fire when we need it. We will change our tactics to use both of your skills." He paused for a beat. "You will need more training in advanced skills, like wind reading, moving targets, and shooting in low light. Stone will be in charge of your training." She replied with a simple, "Yes, sir." Hawkins added one more thing, his tone softening just a little. Your father was an incredible teacher, Barrett. I am sorry you had to break your promise to him, but I am also very grateful that you did. Sloane could only nod, a lump in her throat preventing her from speaking. The team started to pack up. Only Stone stayed behind. He said, "Your advanced training starts tomorrow. We will cover long-range weather, engaging moving targets, and night shooting. I am sure your father taught you this, but we are going to make it official." She answered, "Thank you, Senior Chief." He replied, "Do not thank me yet. I am not an easy teacher, but you have the best foundation I have ever seen outside of our top-tier units. We will build on that." Stone started to leave. Then he stopped and turned around. He said, "Your father told me something. The last time I saw him, back in 2011, he said, 'I am not teaching my daughter to be a killer. I am teaching her to be a protector. One day someone will need her protection, and she will be the only one who can help. I want her to be able to make that choice.'" Stone looked her right in the eyes. "You had to make that choice last night, and you made the right one. That is all he ever wanted for you." Sloane watched him walk away, alone with the rifle and her memories. For 11 years she had kept this part of herself hidden. That was finished now. She was Sloane Barrett, daughter of Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, a hospital corpsman first class, and now she was a warrior. Her father had equipped her with two very different gifts. She was finally prepared to use them both. 3 weeks after the contractor rescue, new orders came in. It was a mission with a very high level of risk. An American journalist had been taken hostage near the Turkish border. His name was Thomas Whitfield, and he was a freelancer covering the refugee crisis. Intelligence said he would be executed in 48 hours. This mission was going to be much different from the last one. Sloane would not be on standby at the base this time. Hawkins brought the team together and said, "We leave at 0400 tomorrow. The briefing is at 2000 tonight, with a full rehearsal after. This will be a difficult mission. The location is tough and there are civilians around. The rules for engagement will be extremely strict." Then he turned his gaze to Sloane. "Have you ever heard about a mission that seemed impossible before it even began?" Barrett's team believed they were prepared, but they were walking into a trap. This is the story of how a single hidden talent would save every one of them. The mission briefing that night spelled out the dangers. The enemy was concealed deep inside a long, narrow valley. A small town sat very close to their position. Intelligence reports suggested 15 to 20 hostiles, a mix of local militia and foreign fighters. Their hostage, Whitfield, had been confirmed alive just 12 hours ago. The report stated his execution was set for noon the following day. This gave them an incredibly small window of time to act. Hawkins pointed to a map of the area. "A helicopter will drop us 2 kilometers to the north. Stone will establish a sniper position here, 800 meters from the main building. The 6-person team will approach on foot. You will breach the compound at 0700, right at sunrise. Your goal is to rescue Whitfield and leave. You have a 90-minute maximum on the ground." Stone studied the map and pointed out a serious problem. "There is only one road in and out of this valley. If they spot us, they can block our only escape. There is a second escape route, 3 kilometers to the northwest. The helicopter needs a 20-minute heads-up before it can reach that pickup point." Frost then raised his hand. "What is Whitfield's medical status?" "We do not have details. We must assume he is hurt, maybe from being tortured. He might not be able to walk. Barrett, prepare to give medical aid and get him stable fast. Yes, sir, there is one other thing." A heavy shadow crossed Hawkins's face. "Our intel suggests a former military sniper is among the guards, possibly with Russian training. This mission is now extremely dangerous. Stone and Barrett, you must be ready for a sniper duel. The team drilled their plan until midnight. They practiced breaking into the building, rescuing a casualty, and reacting to any sudden changes. They ran every step until it was second nature. At 3 in the morning, Sloane performed a final check of her equipment. Her medical pack alone was 40 pounds. It was filled with tourniquets, bandages, 4 bags, and everything else to keep someone alive. Her M4 rifle was prepared with 4 extra magazines holding 150 rounds. Her Beretta M9 pistol was snug at her hip. Including her armor, she was carrying a total of 110 pounds. She had carried this kind of weight before and was ready to do it again tonight. The helicopter ride was unusually silent. It flew low and dark, a ghost in the sky. They landed in a dry riverbed 2 kilometers from the target. The moment their boots hit the ground, the helicopter melted back into the night. A deep silence fell over the desert. Stone instantly broke away, moving like a phantom to his sniper nest on the ridge. The rest of the team, Hawkins, Gunny, Frost, Garrett, Dixon, and Sloane, started their long walk to the compound. The journey took 40 minutes. They moved with slow, deliberate steps, letting the darkness hide them. At 06:45 they arrived at the compound wall. Stone's voice suddenly crackled in their ears. "I am in position. I can see the target. My thermal scope is picking up. Wait a moment. I am seeing far more hostiles than we planned for. I count between 25 and 30 people, not the 15 to 20 in our briefing." Hawkins stopped in his tracks. "Say that again?" 30. I can confirm 30 individuals. A few cars just pulled up. It looks like they brought more men. The intelligence was completely wrong. Sloane felt a cold knot of fear tighten in her stomach. More enemies meant more danger. It meant a teammate was more likely to get hurt. Hawkins made the decision. "We are continuing the mission. Whitfield will die if we leave now. Entry team, get ready for a much harder fight. Stone, your job is to take out anyone who blocks our escape. Barrett, you stick close to me." They got into position at the door they planned to breach. Frost was at the front with the explosive charge. Gunny stood behind him, then Hawkins, and then Sloane. Frost placed the charge on the door. Everyone moved back to a safe distance. He gave a hand signal to start the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The explosion tore the door from its hinges in a cloud of dust and splintered wood. The team poured into the building. The first room was empty. In the second, 2 men were reaching for their guns. Gunny and Frost took them down before they fired a shot. In the third room they found Whitfield. He was tied to a chair. His face was covered in bruises, and his shirt was stained with blood, but he was alive. His eyes grew wide with shock when he saw the American soldiers. "We have the package," Hawkins said into his radio. Sloane rushed over to Whitfield. She quickly checked his injuries. He seemed to have broken ribs and deep cuts on his face. He was very weak, but could walk with support. She cut the ropes binding him. "Can you walk?" He whispered back. "I think so. Stay right with me." In that instant, their entire world exploded. A rocket-propelled grenade blew out the window, and the blast threw Sloane hard against the wall. A deafening ring filled her ears, and her vision blurred. She quickly checked herself for injuries. Her arms and legs were fine, and she saw no blood. She was ready to fight, but Garrett was on the ground. Sloane crawled over to him. His left leg had a severe wound high on his thigh, dangerously close to a major artery. Bright red blood pulsed out with every beat of his heart. Her first feeling was a familiar sense of duty, but this was different. This time she knew exactly what to do. She reached into her pack for a tourniquet, her hands moving with confident purpose. This was the third time she had treated this type of injury, and the motions were now automatic. She wrapped the band high and tight around Garrett's leg and pulled the strap with all of her might. After feeding it through the buckle, She started to turn the tightening rod. Garrett's face twisted in pain, but he stayed silent. He knew this horrible process was the only thing that would save his life. Sloane kept twisting the rod with intense focus. With each turn, the pressure grew, squeezing the arteries shut. The powerful flow of blood slowed to a weak trickle and then finally stopped. She locked the rod into place and marked down the time. The entire life-saving action had taken her only 16 seconds. "You are going to be fine." She needed to start an intravenous line, but there was no time for that. A sudden burst of gunfire exploded from outside. It was the distinct sound of a heavy machine gun. Stone's voice came through the radio. "You have enemy fire coming from all sides. I count more than 30 hostiles. There is a machine gun on the roof of the north building, about 380 meters away from you. I do not have a clear shot from my position. The other buildings are in my way." Hawkins quickly understood their dire situation. Garrett was stable but could not walk. Whitfield was hurt but could move. They were surrounded by 30 enemies and a deadly machine gun. "We have to eliminate that gun, or none of us are getting out of here alive." Sloane peered carefully through the window. She could see the north building and the two-man crew on its roof. Stone was unable to take the shot. She knew she was the only other team member with a precision rifle. "Commander, I can see the machine gun nest." Hawkins glanced from her to Garrett. "You need to stay with the wounded. Garrett is stable for now, sir. The tourniquet is holding. But none of us will be safe until that gun is silenced." Hawkins knew that she was right. Take the shot. Sloane got into position near the window and raised her M4 rifle. Looking through her scope, she calculated the distance. It was 380 meters. There was hardly any wind. She estimated her bullet would drop roughly 18 inches over that range. The gunner was mostly hidden behind a metal plate. She could only see his head and the top of his chest. It was an extremely small target and a difficult shot, but it was not impossible. She steadied her breathing, waited for the calm moment between breaths, and gently pulled the trigger. The machine gunner was thrown backward and went down, but a second man instantly took his place and started firing again. Sloane made a tiny adjustment to her aim. The new gunner was being far more careful and showed less of his body. She fired a second round. The bullet sparked as it struck the gun's metal frame. It was a clean miss. The gunner ducked down even more. Sloane tracked his movement, aimed just in front of him, and fired her third shot. It was a perfect hit. The second gunner fell. The heavy machine gun went silent. "Gun is down," Stone announced on the radio. "That was incredible shooting, Doc. Entry team, we have to go now." Hawkins helped Whitfield to his feet. Gunny and Frost lifted Garrett onto a makeshift carrier. "Barrett, you are with me. Cover our rear." They started to pull out, carrying Garrett on a stretcher made from a door and some rope. Sloane and Hawkins laid down covering fire as the team retreated. The compound behind them descended into chaos. Enemies poured out from every direction. The team had to fight their way across 200 meters of open ground. Sloane fired at targets as they appeared, using controlled, short bursts. She never stayed still, just as her father had taught her. Fire and move, never become an easy target. They finally reached the designated rally point. They found temporary safety behind a cluster of large rocks, 400 meters from the compound. Sloane's first priority was to check on Garrett. The tourniquet was still holding strong. She started the IV line she couldn't do before. His face was pale, but he was awake. Whitfield was slumped against the rock, breathing hard. Sloane quickly checked on him. She asked, "How are you feeling?" He replied in a faint voice, "Like I was beaten and starved for 4 days." "That sounds about right," she thought. She gave him some water and told him to take only very small sips. Hawkins got on his radio, informing command that they needed an emergency evacuation at Landing Zone Alpha. He reported they had 2 wounded. The response was that a helicopter was on its way, and would be there in 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. They had to survive for just 10 more minutes. Suddenly, Stone's voice, laced with pain, came over the radio. "I am hit," he said, gasping for air. "It is my right shoulder. I cannot provide any more cover fire." In that instant, they lost their sniper. At that very moment, the enemy started moving toward them again. Through her scope, Sloane could see them clearly. A squad of 8 men was advancing on them. They were only 200 meters away and closing in fast. The team was trapped in a terrible spot. Garrett was hurt, and Whitfield was barely on his feet. Stone, their best marksman, was now bleeding. They could not fight and protect their wounded men at the same time. One person had to hold the line. Sloane knew it had to be her. "Commander, I will make a stand here. I can keep them busy while you get the others to the chopper." "That is not an option. I need you with the wounded." "Sir, Garrett is stable, and Whitfield will hold on. But if that enemy squad gets to us before the helicopter, we are all finished. Give me 1 minute. I will pin them down and then fall back to you." Hawkins knew she was correct, but he hated this idea. "You get 60 seconds, Barrett. Then you get out." It was a direct order. "Yes, sir," she replied. Sloane took 2 extra magazines from Frost's pack. She found a strong defensive spot, about 150 meters from her team. The position gave her great cover and a perfect view of the enemy. She went prone, setting up the bipod on her M4 rifle. She had 90 rounds ready, and more with her Beretta M9 pistol. 8 hostiles were advancing, now about 180 meters out. She chose her first target, the lead man in the group. She put 2 rounds in his chest, and he dropped to the ground. The other 7 were professionals, and immediately took cover. They began firing back, their bullets hitting the rocks around her. Sloane remained completely calm. She found her next mark, fired, and a second man fell. She glanced at her watch. 15 seconds had passed. She had 45 seconds left. The 6 remaining enemies moved with perfect teamwork. 3 went left to flank her, while 3 pushed forward on her right. It was a classic pincer movement. Sloane focused on the group to her left. She fired 2 quick shots at each man. 1 fell, another was hit, and the last dove for safety. The group on the right used that chance to advance. They were now only 100 meters away, which was much too close. Sloane scrambled 20 meters to her right, creating a new angle to shoot from. The enemy continued to fire on her old position, a fatal delay. From her new location, she focused on the group to her right. The 3 men were now just 70 meters away. She fired slow, controlled shots. The first man dropped, then the second, then the third. 30 seconds remained on the clock. Only 3 of the original 8 were left, and they were staying hidden. They were moving with extreme caution now. From behind her, she heard the wonderful sound of the approaching helicopter. That was the sound of their escape. 15 seconds left. One of the last 3 hostiles made a move. He was holding a large object. Through her scope, Sloane knew what it was, instantly. It was a rocket launcher. He was getting ready to shoot down the helicopter. He was moving, now 240 meters out. She had only seconds before he could take his shot. If that rocket hit the helicopter, it would be over for all of them. Sloane quickly calculated the wind speed, the distance, and the target's movement. She took a final, deep breath and entered a state of total focus. She gently pulled the trigger. The man with the rocket launcher collapsed. The weapon clattered uselessly to the ground beside him. The helicopter landed safely at the extraction zone. Now she had to run. Sloane burst from her cover and sprinted toward the chopper. It was a 150-meter dash in full combat gear. Every muscle in her legs burned with pain. The last 2 enemies shot at her, their bullets zipping past her head. They were close, but none of them found their mark. She ran as fast as she could, weaving back and forth to be a harder target. 50 meters left, Gunny appeared at the door. "Go, Doc, go!" 25 meters left. She was the last one standing. Gunny grabbed her by the arm and pulled her inside the chopper. The helicopter lifted off immediately, banking hard as it gained speed and altitude. Sloane collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Now that the fight was done, her body began to tremble. Garrett stared from his stretcher, his face filled with complete amazement. Doc just took on 8 enemies all by herself. "Only 5, Sloane corrected him, still fighting for breath. "I only engaged 5. The other 3 got away. Frost just shook his head, unable to believe it. "That last shot, the one on the rocket man, you were on the move and still hit him from 240 meters. Sloane managed a weak smile. "You just do what is necessary when there are no other choices." Hawkins knelt beside her. "You saved us all again." Sloane was too exhausted to respond. The weight of what she had just done was starting to settle in. The brutal violence, the men she had killed, and the awful reasons for it all. But her team was safe. Garrett, Whitfield, and the others were all alive because she did what was required. Stone was propped against the wall, his right shoulder soaked with blood. Sloane forced herself to stand up. "Senior Chief, I need to check that shoulder. I am fine, Doc." "You are not fine until I say you are. Let me take a look." She carefully cut away the fabric of his uniform. The bullet made a small, clean entry wound, but it never came out the other side. The round was stuck inside him. A clean pass-through would have been much better. "This has to stay put until a surgeon can take it out," she said. She cleaned the area with saline, packed it with gauze to stop the bleeding, and then wrapped it firmly. Stone clenched his jaw against the pain, but did not make a sound. "You will need surgery to get that out, but you are not in danger of bleeding to death. It seems like the nerves and arteries are okay." She secured the last bandage. "You should be able to fire a rifle again in about 6 weeks." 6 weeks? Stone's face became stern. "Doc, I need to be ready in 3. Take the full 6 weeks," she commanded, "or you will risk permanent damage. The decision is yours, Senior Chief." Stone nodded slowly. 6 weeks it is. The helicopter flew them back to the main operating base. Garrett and Stone were sent directly into surgery. Whitfield was sent for a medical checkup and to file his report. The rest of the team went to clean their weapons and write their after-action reports. Sloane was by herself in the medical bay, trying to cope with the heavy burden of her actions. Admiral Morrison arrived 2 days later. The team assembled in their dress uniforms for a formal debriefing. As Morrison entered the room, everyone snapped to perfect attention. "Please be seated," he said, moving to the front. "I have gone over the reports from your last mission, and what I have read is absolutely remarkable." He made eye contact with each team member, his gaze finally stopping on Sloane. "In the last month, Petty Officer Barrett has saved 4 lives using her medical skills. She has also taken out 9 enemy combatants, defended a position alone against a larger enemy, and made the rescue of an American reporter possible." Morrison then walked until he was standing directly in front of Sloane. Her father, Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, was one of the finest Marines I ever knew. He taught his daughter about far more than just marksmanship. He taught her the meaning of service and protection. He taught her that saving a life can sometimes require using force, and that this force can be a kind of healing. He paused for a moment. "When Mike died 11 years ago, Sloane promised her mother she would never pick up a firearm again. She kept that promise for 11 years. She broke it 3 weeks ago to save her commander. She has broken it several times since then to protect her teammates and ensure the mission's success." Morrison's voice became gentle. Mike would have understood. In fact, he would have demanded it. He gave her those skills because he knew she might have to face a day like this, and I am positive her teammates are thankful for that fact every single day. He looked straight into Sloane's eyes. Your father did not raise you to be a killer, Petty Officer Barrett. He raised you to be a protector. You honor his memory with everything you do. Morrison then opened a folder containing official papers. Effective immediately, I am recommending you for a dual qualification as both a combat medic and a sharpshooter. This will formally recognize the skills you have shown us again and again. I am also submitting your name for the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for your courageous actions during Whitfield's rescue. Sloane felt a knot tighten in her throat. Sir, I was just doing my job. Your job now includes tasks that most medics are never required to do. It includes things that even most combat soldiers struggle with. Morrison gave her a small smile. Mike would be proud of you. So incredibly proud. The team's reaction was instant. Gunny came forward and did something very rare. He offered her a salute, even though they held a similar rank. It was not standard procedure, but the message of respect was unmistakable. Sloane returned his salute. Frost came next, offering his hand. I was wrong about you, Doc. I was 100% wrong. You were not wrong, Frost, she replied. You just did not have all the facts. You earned this. Stone was the last to approach, his arm in a sling. He offered her a unique custom-made patch. It featured a Navy SEAL trident over a medical cross, a red symbol inside the golden insignia. It is not regulation, Stone admitted, but it is who you are, a medic and a warrior. You need to own that. That night, Sloane sat alone, looking at the patch and reflecting on the difficult journey that brought her to this moment. She considered the promises she kept and the one she had to break. She thought of the father she lost, but whose legacy she tried to honor, and the woman she was finally becoming. Her phone began to ring. It was her mother. Sloane answered the call. "Mom? I saw it on the news," her mother began. "They reported an American journalist was rescued in Syria. A SEAL team was involved." Her mother's voice was cautious. "Were you part of that operation?" "Yes," Sloane said. A long silence stretched between them. "Are you all right?" "I am not hurt, if that is what you mean." But the emotional weight was another story. Sloane struggled to explain everything she had experienced. "I am still trying to make sense of it all," she said. "It is so complicated." Her mother replied, "Your father used to say things like that after a mission. He talked about needing time to accept his actions and who he had to be." Her mother took a deep breath. "Sloane, I need to tell you something. I am not happy you broke your promise, but I understand why it was necessary, and I am so incredibly proud of you. I took more lives, Mum," Sloane confessed in a quiet voice. "You saved more," her mother answered gently. "You helped countless people as a medic and a fighter. That is the lesson your father wanted you to learn." Her mother's voice grew stronger. "Your reasons are what matter. You are not hurting people for revenge or for sport. You are protecting your team. That is entirely different. It is about serving a greater good. I just miss him so much." "I know," her mother whispered. "I do too. I think of him every single day." There was a short pause. "But he is with you always, my dear. He is in your skills, in the choices you make, and in every single life you save." They talked for a while longer. Her mother asked a few questions, and Sloane shared what she was allowed to. For both of them, a new understanding started to mend their old wounds. After hanging up, Sloane sat in the quiet for a long time. Then, with her mind made up, she carefully stitched the special patch onto her uniform's sleeve. Official or not, it represented her true identity. 6 months later, Sloane Barrett stood in front of a class at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. 16 medics and operators sat before her, all part of the very first course of its kind. The program was called Integrated Combat Medicine and Tactical Shooting. a curriculum she had designed based on her own experiences. "Welcome to ICMTS," she began. "This course exists because on the battlefield your job title means nothing. A gunfight does not care if you are a medic or a rifleman, it demands that you are both. We are going to teach you how to be both." She then walked over to the training area. A practice dummy was on the floor, with a shooting range visible behind it. "The first rule is basic," she said. "Taking care of a wounded teammate is always your top priority. Your main job is to preserve life. But for your patient to survive, you have to neutralize the threat. Sometimes you must fight before you can heal. And yes, sometimes that means you will have to kill. Knowing when to switch between those duties is what separates a good operator from a great one." Sloane then began her demonstration, blending the skills seamlessly. She treated a simulated leg wound, applying a tourniquet with rapid precision. The entire movement took only 19 seconds. Then, without a moment's hesitation, she grabbed her rifle and dropped into a shooting position. She fired at a target 300 meters away, hitting it dead center. She was instantly back with the patient, inserting an IV line and continuing medical aid. The whole drill was over in just 47 seconds. The students watched in absolute silence, completely in awe. "This is not about being the best medic or the best marksman," Sloane explained. "It is about being so good at both that your team can count on you for either task at any given second." "Are there any questions?" A young corpsman who seemed barely out of her teens slowly raised her hand. "Petty Officer Barrett, how can you do those two things? Medicine is for saving lives. Fighting is for taking them. How do you live in two completely different worlds?" Sloane was familiar with the question. She had asked it of herself many times. "You do not try to keep them separate," she replied. "You combine them. Both jobs have the same mission, to protect your team. Sometimes that means putting a bandage on a wound. Other times it means stopping the person causing the wounds. Both of those acts are a kind of service. Both are absolutely necessary. But what about the promise to do no harm? That oath is about never causing harm without a just reason. The situation you are in changes everything. Allowing your team to be hurt when you could have stopped it is also a type of harm. Taking one enemy life to save your entire squad is just battlefield triage. We make similar choices in hospitals every day. This is the same idea, just on a much larger scale. The training continued for another 6 hours. The students went through hands-on drills, complex medical scenarios, and live-fire exercises. The students were learning to switch from one mindset to the other instantly. When the day's class ended, Sloane went to her office. A huge pile of paperwork sat on her desk. There were proposals from 3 different hospitals wanting to use her program, memos about expanding it, and notes from other service women who wanted her advice. But one particular email stood out. The subject line read simply, "You have changed my life." It came from a corpsman named Sarah Mitchell. "Petty Officer Barrett, I am assigned to a Marine unit. I heard about you, a medic who is also a sharpshooter. My father was a ranger. He taught me to shoot before he passed away when I was 14. I joined the Navy because I promised my mother I would save lives, not take them. But your story made me see that I do not have to pick one over the other. I can honor both sides of myself. Thank you for showing me that it is possible, and for proving that a woman can do these tough jobs without losing her way. You have truly changed my life." Sloane read the email 3 times. She thought about her own path, and how one person's choices can create ripples that spread outward. Her father's life created a ripple that eventually touched hers, and now her ripples were touching the lives of others. The story was continuing. That evening, Sloane drove to a shooting range that overlooked the ocean. It was the same place where new SEALs trained, and where her father had once stood, wondering what amazing things his daughter would do one day. She prepared her rifle, an M4-5, for a 1,000-meter shot. This was the kind of shot that distinguished good shooters from the true legends. The sun was going down, a cool wind blew in from the sea, and the light was fading fast. All the conditions made a perfect shot seem nearly impossible. She calculated every variable, compensated for the wind, steadied her breathing, calmed her heart, and entered a state of complete focus. Then she squeezed the trigger. The bullet travelled for 2 seconds across more than half a mile of dusky sky. She peered through her scope. The shot was perfect, a clean bullseye. She whispered, "Still got it, Dad?" She could almost imagine his response as if he were right beside her. "You always did, kiddo. You were already a better shot than me at 16. Now you are the best there has ever been. I miss you." "I know," his voice seemed to answer in her mind. "But you are not by yourself. You have your team, your students, and your mission. This is all I ever wanted for you. Not to walk in my footsteps, but to find your own path, using the gifts I gave you." Sloane packed her gear and began her drive home. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Hawkins. "Mission brief at 8 o'clock tomorrow. This one is going to be tough. We will need all of your talents." She smiled and typed her reply. "I am ready, sir." In just the last 6 months, she had helped save 23 lives. Her medical knowledge had stopped people from dying. Her combat skills had protected her team from harm. But the real victory was not in the statistics. It was in the people. Garrett was alive because she put on a tourniquet in 16 seconds. Hawkins was alive because she made a 280-meter shot at the perfect time. Whitfield was home with his family because one person knew how to patch up the wounded while fighting off the enemy. Sloane Barrett, daughter of Michael Barrett, was a petty officer, a hospital corpsman, and a designated marksman. She was a healer and a guardian, all in one. She was never just one thing. Instead, she was the perfect combination of 2 different worlds. This was the person her father had always encouraged her to be. Her true story was not about the battles she fought or the enemies she faced. It was about the teammates she saved, the students she guided, and the new path she created for everyone else. She showed that you could bring 2 callings together. You did not have to choose between being a healer and a protector. She proved that the greatest heroes were masters of both. Tomorrow would bring its own set of problems, with more people to rescue and new dangers to conquer. It would be one more day to show what being a true warrior really meant. But in this moment she finally felt at peace. A promise she thought she had broken long ago was now fulfilled, in a way her younger self could never have guessed. Her father would have been so immensely proud of the woman she became. Her mother was finally at peace with her daughter's chosen life. Her fellow soldiers trusted her completely with their safety. Her students looked up to her with deep admiration. In the future, many others would follow the trail she had forged. They would learn that serving others takes many forms, and that keeping people safe requires a blend of skills. They would understand that the best heroes can master 2 worlds. That person was Sloane Barrett. She was exactly who her father raised her to be, and she was who the world needed. Someone who could mend and someone who could guard. A medic and a marksman. She was whole.